Okay, welcome everyone. People are joining. Dr. Brown is here. Don Brown will be showing us how to present the path tonight as we start the first module. Hello, Ben. Hi, Jennifer. Hello, Ian. It is, yeah. Module number 3. Okay. We'll just let everyone get connected here. Welcome to those on YouTube. We should be live streaming. Hey, Rebecca, welcome. Hey, Mark. Ben, can you hear us okay? Are you? Okay, great. Thank you for that confirmation. Yeah. Hello, Martin, with your cute little bunny screen there. It is Easter coming up soon.
That's actually a picture of my grandson.
Mark said that looks just like you, Martin.
I just want to check my microphone. Can you actually hear me?
Yes, we can, Martin. Thank you. We can.
Excellent. Now I'll go quiet and you'll never hear me again.
All right, well, we'll get all right. This clock just said 7, so welcome to Discovering Buddhism. This is which module is this, the third one? Okay. Presenting the path. God, I was thinking, well, how many people are have done Discovering Buddhism? I don't know how many people are on board. I mean, over here, it looks like there's 7 online. Is that right? Hey. Anyway, there's a cute dog.
Hi, Rainey.
Dogs can learn the Dharma too. So, welcome. I'm Don Brown. I took refuge. I just calculated 47 years ago. Not bad. So, not my first rodeo. And presenting Discovering Buddhism, I've probably done this a lot. Anyway, not that I'm still a beginner, advanced beginner, but a beginner, just because I've been around a longer time. So we always start out by doing some prayers, and before we do that, though, let's at least I'd like for people to take a moment to reflect on why you're doing this class. I mean, what is your intent? What is your aspiration for yourself? Because you could be doing other things tonight. I mean, there's some good shows on Netflix, and you could binge Night Watch or whatever that one is. That is number one. But so think about what is it that you'd like to happen? And what kind of effort are you willing to put into getting the results that you want? Because obviously you don't want to be sitting here for, I mean, it's only an hour and a half. It's not very long. Hour and a half? Yeah. Like 4 times that is nothing in our life. And by the way, I was thinking about this. There will be a last time when you get to hear the Dharma, This could be it. Could be it. There will be a last time. Last time you say hello to goodbye to your family, hello to your job, goodbye to your job, whatever. There's going to be a last time for everything. So this might be the last time you ever get to hear the Dharma. Well, that's precious. The Dharma is very precious that way. It's good to think of it in those terms. That today is really, Lama Zopa says, the best thing you can do in the morning is wake up and say, today is it. This is what I have. This is the last day of my life. I got to just take it on. Be completely present and take every moment to keep my mind in virtue and create causes for happiness. So let's just think about what your intention is. Okay, so before we get started, I would like, because there's some people online, and I don't know if you can speak up or not, but anyway, could everybody go around the room and just say how much experience, how much Buddha Dharma have you studied? Is this your first year? Just introduce yourself, and then the people online, if you don't mind speaking up, just saying your name and how long you've been studying, and anything else you want to say too, actually, is fine. Yeah, go ahead.
I just felt a little on the spot. I'm like, okay. My name's Rebecca. I've been studying Buddhism and the Dharma for over 20 years and been to many retreats. I started my Discovering Buddhism path about a year ago. I can't remember exactly, but I'm intent on doing the full 2 years starting this year going. Thank you.
Good.
And I'm Linda. I started Discovering Buddhism with Don Brown probably 20 years ago when we were in the old building in the basement. And I think I came to module 1, and it was a tiny little room. And I was sitting right there in front of you, dead center. And I was just like, oh my gosh. I love this stuff. So this is probably my 4th time I've gone through Discovering Buddhism, 4th or 5th, something like that. You would think it would sink in better by now.
And so my name's Mark. I began studying the Dharma in 1999 through the Prison Project, and I was also introduced to Discovering Buddhism through that. A little bit different format, but it was still there. but I've probably been practicing Dharma all of my life. I just didn't realize it, you know, and maybe who knows how many lifetimes before that. But yeah, and my goal is just to do the best I can to help others be free from suffering.
Just saying what our experience is with.
Oh, okay.
What's your name?
My name's John Castello. I've been coming to the center since 2003, and I think I took 2 rounds of Discovering Buddhism way back then, but I've had enough time to forget it, and so I'm here to remind myself what all this is.
What was the question? Name and what your experience with Buddhism.
My name is CJ Wilkerson. I ran into the Dharma very early in life, but didn't actually start coming to the center until 2015. And okay. Oh, okay.
My name is Lisa Matthews. I think this is my 3rd go-round with Discovering Buddhism. The first one was back in 2012, and I had several classes with Venerable Rubina, which kind of was a wonderful introduction to Buddhism, taking some of her classes as well. So yeah, I'm glad to be back going around again, because I learned by repetition. Martin, would you like to start? Just unmute.
Hi, my name's Martin. I started on a path of mysticism about 30 years ago now, and I heard the terms Dharma, Karma, etc., without actually knowing what they were. I started at the Kadampa Center a year ago. I went through the videos of Discovering Buddhism and really enjoyed it. So now I'm trying to do it in real time and actually do all the reading and stuff. So I've been going a whole year. So
Great, Martin, thank you. Ben, would you like to go next?
thank you.
My name's Ben, and this is my first go-through, so I'm brand new.
Oh, all right, welcome.
A newbie, hey? It's always a first time.
Rainey, how would you like to go next?
Hi, I'm Rainey Parker, and I think this is maybe my 2nd time through. I don't remember things as well as I used to, so I really appreciate the opportunity to hear these things more than once.
Yeah, great. Ian, would you like to chime in?
My name's Ian Parker, and this is my 2nd time doing Discovering Buddhism. And I've been a local member of the Presbyterian Church, and it would be a nice opportunity to try out some new things.
Great, great. Paul? Can you unmute Paul?
Paul, you need to unmute.
He's working on it, yeah. No pressure. Jennifer, you want to chime in while Paul's working on his?
Yeah, my name is Jennifer. I've dibbled and dabbled through the years. I'm a mental health counselor, so I teach some some mindfulness practices, but this is my first time going through this course.
Excellent, excellent. Naga?
I have been doing this for forever, but I always learn something new each time, and it keeps my mind focused on my practice, so I just come back all the time.
Great, great. A lot of us do. Okay, Paul, I
Thank
think
you.
you're muted now.
Yes, my name is Paul Hansen, and besides being a little bit computer illiterate, I'm been doing this. This is my second go round, and I've enjoyed it very much.
Great, great. I think Esther's our final contestant here. Okay, got it. All right, Esther? And Carmen? Either one? No?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, there we go.
Carmen.
Carmen, go right ahead.
Yeah, this is Carmen. Hi, Teacher Brown. I hope you remember me. I used to live there 3 years ago in North Carolina. So I met you in person. But I started Buddhism through Shambhala in Boulder, Colorado. That was 2012. So it's 13 years almost. But I started first as a Catholic. I'm from Lima, Peru. So I was a Catholic for a long time. And I didn't really, I had too many questions. And the priest would never answer my questions. So when I got to Buddhism, I said, this is it. This is what I was looking for. And I became a Buddhist. 2014, took refuge. Yeah, it actually sounds, I've been in so many museums in Peru, all books. I think I was a monk, maybe past lives. I had a couple of past life dreams that nobody could answer since I was 3 years old. And it was a monk with dress in black. I think it might be the Saint Inquisition. I was so afraid of that. So I know it was real. Then at 10 years old, I banged my head, almost killed myself, and I had a near-death experience. So I was out of my body. So I had all these questions nobody could answer in Lima, Peru. For 30 years, I lived in secret, until I found Buddhism, because they would call me crazy. And I found all my answers in Buddhism. Thank you.
Great, Carmen. Thank you for sharing. Esther, would you like to share? Okay.
That's fine. Okay, and I'm Don Brown. I've been, this is not, it's embarrassing how long I've been involved in Buddhism and how little I know, but anyway, I know more than I did when I started. But actually, my story, I'll say a little bit about it because it's, I think it's a little bit, in some ways, it's probably everybody's story or similar, is that, that oftentimes, and I've taught them, literally thousands of people coming through this center over the years, and everybody's looking for something, There's restlessness, I guess, to say one way of saying it. And I experienced this in my late 20s, and I sort of I decided to put everything in storage and set up some jobs in India and Africa, part-time, just for a few months here and there, doing some volunteer work, and but just to go check it out and see what's out there. So I bought a ticket on Pan Am 1 and just took a trip around the world. And so I could go anywhere I wanted to. And I ended up in Kathmandu, Nepal in 1978. And I was sitting next to a guy who was going up to Kopan Monastery the next day. And I had just purchased a new camera down in Hong Kong, and I was excited to go take some pictures of a Buddhist monastery. No interest in Buddhism really at the time. But fast forward, I got up there and I signed up for this 1-month course, which basically Lama Zopa taught like 6 hours a day, and we probably meditated about at least 3 hours a day on the material that was over a 30-day period that we're supposed to cover in 6 hours. So we're not going to cover that much material, right? We're going to try. But anyway, that was my introduction to Buddhism, and I'm very much like some of you. It felt like I was coming home. I was like, wow, these are things I've intuited my whole life. I went look in my diary, and I kept writing because I was born and raised a Presbyterian, you know. So I kept saying, I'm not going to become a Buddhist. I'm just here to get what I can get. But it just resonated with me, and just in the course of that 1 month meditation course where there were teachings and meditation, I could see a real shift in my attitude in the direction I wanted to go, and I felt like it would be wise for me, knowing my instincts to be, procrastinate. It would be wise for me to make a commitment. And so I did. I took refuge, which kind of shocked me, but I just said, hey, this is my path, and the back door is closed. You can only go forward. So that's kind of how I ended up here. And it's it's not easy. Taking a pill is easy. The Dharma is the best pill of all, but it's also a lot of work. For those of you who have experienced any benefit from it, you know that it takes effort. It's a moderate effort over time. So let's do this. Let's watch the video from Discovering Buddhism, and then we'll go back and touch on some of these points. And but my goal for this class is really it's called Presenting the Path, and there's hundreds of meditations that could be done, lots and lots of material that would just be too much information. So rather than sit here and throw confetti at everybody, Dharma confetti, and then you walk out of here not having anything, I decided to use the 8 verses of mind training as kind of the core text for our class. And I'll tell you what, one of the reasons I chose that text, but I do love it. But back in the day, I met Robbie Watkins in Birmingham, Alabama in 1980, maybe 81. It was 1980. I met Robbie, and I was doing this. I was teaching Discovering Buddhism, but it was at UAB, University of Alabama in Birmingham. They had an evening studies course, and so I decided I wanted to, teach some people the Dharma. And Robbie signed up for the class. He was in my residency in family medicine, and he said, I was telling him about the class, and he said he was interested, and I said, are you sure you really want to do this? Because I've never done this before. I've never taught a class before. And I'll just be reading my notes. And he said, sure. So, that was the beginning of our friendship way back in the day. We had a little Dharma study group, and we would invite teachers. And then I left Birmingham and took off again to go back to India to do more travel and study and stuff like that. But anyway, one of the things that Robbie kept that little Dharma study group that we had in Birmingham going, and one of the students was quite young. He was like in his 40s, and he was dying from some sort of malignancy. For a young person in the early 40s, it's just really sad to see somebody die. But he loved this 8 verses of mind training. He read these verses every day. He said it gave him such inspiration to read and contemplate the meaning of these 8 verses. So I think that's enough reason right there. And we can spin off of, as we're going through the verses, we can go off on a tangent and talk about, karma and purification practices and refuge and whatever we want to talk about. But the main thing I think is if we go through the 8 verses and we get some taste of it, that can be really an inspiring practice, for the rest of our lives. That's what I would like for us to just get a little inspiration from the teachings. That'd be good. Be a good start. Yeah, I love that. You can actually download it, and in fact, I almost have done it and put them in little pictures. You can, that's on the Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archives. They have a nice thing of that. All right, so now we're going to do the video. I always like to start out with the Apinti version of it, and so there are lots of monks and nuns and great teachers, masters who teach. Now we're going to do the video. I always like to start out with the Apinti version of it, and so there are lots of monks and nuns and great teachers, masters who teach. Now we're going to do the video. I always like to start out with the Apinti version of it, and
Sorry, little technical difficulty. It always happens when we go to show a video. Okay, so if you want to pull up the 8 verses of thought transformation, you can go to the Kadampa Center website and then click on the webpage for Discovering Buddhism. And there's a list of resources that Don Brown had sent out. So that list of resources can be found on the Discovering Buddhism Module 3 webpage. If you have any questions at the end of class, Lisa or I can help you with that. We'll watch the video now.
This is rainy, just so you know, we can hear the sound okay.
Thank you, Rainey.
the lady on the right is Karen. She still lives in Copan. Can you turn off the lights up here at the front?
Buddhism is a comprehensive system that shows us how to transform our minds from a state of suffering and dissatisfaction to one of extraordinary joy, awareness, and contentment. Vast in scope and profound in its implications, Buddhism accommodates every kind of mental disposition, but retains a laser-like precision that shows us what is to be accepted and what is to be rejected. It was realized and embodied by a human being like us. 2,500 years ago, an Indian prince named Siddhartha from the Shakya clan decided to give up his kingdom to search for a way out of suffering. Because of his relentless determination to find ultimate freedom, he came to understand the nature of his mind and in turn the ultimate reality of all phenomena. He was then called Shakyamuni Buddha. In this show, we will learn about the historical Buddha's life story, the spread of his teachings, and about the stages of the path to enlightenment.
In the following presentations, you're about to hear a great deal about the life, the accomplishments, and the teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha, the historical Buddha. Now, the Buddha worked very hard in order to attain enlightenment, and the impetus behind that hard work was his strong motivation to achieve ultimate freedom and to benefit all living beings as much as possible. And so remembering that we've discussed in the past the importance of our own motivation and modeling after the historical Buddha himself, now, before receiving these teachings, set in your own mind a strong motivation to be able to traverse this spiritual path, to reach enlightenment as quickly as possible in order to benefit all living beings.
One format that the life of Buddha is often presented in the Mahayana tradition is the presentation of what are called the 12 deeds. The 12 deeds are said to be the same activities that all of the 1,000 Buddhas who will appear during this fortunate eon in this world system, they'll all engage in these same kinds of activities. They won't have exactly the same lives. They'll be born in different ways, but they'll have certain format of their life that will be similar. And so for that reason, sort of you might think it's just something that happened in the past, but it's going to happen in the future. So if you know about it, maybe you can be prepared when Maitreya comes and others. In the Mahayana scriptures, it's said that the Buddha himself, the first deed is his leaving of Tushita, handing over the teachership of Tushita, the residency there, to Maitreya, who will be the next Buddha. And the second deed is entering into the womb. The Buddha entered into the womb of his future mother, and at that point she had this dream, very spectacular and pleasant dream of a six-tusked white elephant entering into her. And upon exiting the womb, upon his birth, the Buddha was able to stand up. This young boy was able to stand up immediately and walk 7 steps. The Buddha himself showed, Siddhartha himself, showed himself to be incredibly adroit and expert in many different things. And the next deed is called sporting or enjoying with a harem or retinue of wives. Every kind of pleasure, every kind of sense pleasure, food and warmth, and various castles were built within the walls of the temple, of the city, of the royal city for Gautama. And it's during this point that he is now manifests kind of like what we might notice in the world when people get a little bit bored. He wants to go out of the temple, and his first journey out, he did see some individuals. And on successive journeys, he saw at various times old people, sick people, and a dead person. And and each time he would ask his attendant, what is this? I'd never seen this before. What is this old person bent over and so forth, with a cane? What's wrong with him? And his attendant would say, "This is an old person. This happened." And Siddhartha would say, "Well, is that unusual? Are there many of them?" And he would say, "This happens to everyone. Everyone, this is the fate of everyone." And he saw someone who looked like a renunciate, someone who is seeking the meaning of life, seeking to transcend birth, death, and aging, aging, death, sickness, and so forth, the things that the Buddha had perceived. So this supposedly was the element now that began to coalesce, that clicked in the Siddhartha's mind. This is what I should do. I should leave home also. And he takes the act, he takes his hair, his beautiful royal locks, and with his sword cuts them off. And it's said that that's one of the relics. He goes off seeking teachers, seeking the answer to sickness and old age and death. And even though the teachers themselves were very fond of Siddhartha, recognized him as a prince and saw his great qualities and the fact that he achieved their state, even though they were the teacher, he'd achieved the same realization they did in a very short amount of time. They asked him to stay on and teach their disciples. He refused and went off to try to find an answer to this riddle that he had encountered. Sometimes living on just a small berry from the tree a day. Siddhartha became very emaciated. So at this point, the Buddha himself is beginning to recognize that he's not making any progress. The Buddha went to bathe in the river, found himself very weak, couldn't even get out of the water. Began to worry, what's going to happen. He began then to beg some food. Now the Buddha is invigorated, Siddhartha is invigorated, and he seeks now a place to do meditation, then sits down on this cushion of grass with the determination, until I achieve the essence of enlightenment, I am not rising. So this is now the demarcation of the next act, which is called the defeat of Mara, or the defeat of the Maras. Mara is someone who it can be part of our own being, our own mind, or it can be something external that hinders our spiritual development. And that evening, he achieves his enlightenment, which is now called the next deed, under the Bodhi tree that evening, completely transformed, eliminating from his mind all the vestiges of ignorance and any kind of insufficiency, inabilities, and spends the next 7 weeks without moving very far away. So, who shall I teach? Oh, those 5 disciples with whom I spent 6 years. Their minds are only, their Dharma eye is only slightly covered with the dust of ignorance. So he travels, knowing where they are, to the Deer Park near Sarnath, and he begins to teach them on the very first discourse on the Four Noble Truths. And this is the beginning of this deed, which was essentially the next long period of the Buddha's life. So many decades teaching, and for the rest of his life at that time, after that time, spent many decades teaching, turning the wheel of Dharma, finally took the aspect of passing away, dying, passing into parinirvana. So that, in a nutshell, just as a sort of an introduction, is a little bit about the life of the Buddha, the 12 deeds.
This is something you hear again and again, Lam Rim, graduated path. Lam means path, and Rim means graduated or graded, yeah, step by step. And this way of practicing is very specific, to the Tibetan Buddhist presentation of the path. If we think a little bit about the history of Buddhism, because the Lam Rim contains all the Buddha's teachings on sutra. the sutra path. There's two paths, the sutra and the tantra. And the Buddha's path on sutra is divided up, in the Hinayana attitude and the Mahayana attitude. And the Hinayana and Mahayana path, they're all included in the Lam Rim. The main difference between Hinayana and Mahayana is mainly in the attitude, the purpose and the goal. Yeah? That in the Hinayana, one motivates oneself for one's own liberation. In the Mahayana attitude, the attitude is seeking enlightenment, for the sake of all living beings, a more universal goal. And for that, we train ourselves in renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view. Of course, actually to attain enlightenment, one also has to practice Tantra. They say that one cannot attain complete full enlightenment without at some point practice highest Yoga Tantra. But, if you look aside from the attitude, the actual practices of Hinayana and Mahayana go together. They're not sort of two completely separate paths. So the Lam Rim contains all of the teachings. The Hinayana spread to different countries like Sri Lanka, Thailand, and Burma, Vietnam, and flourished there. Later on, when the Mahayana flourished, that spread to China, Tibet, Mongolia, and the northern countries, and flourished there. So anyway, the great Atisha, he came to Tibet, so he wrote the first Lam Rim, the graduated path, taking all of Buddha's teachings, but putting them in a very clear, step-by-step, approach. And he called it the three scopes. So in Tibet, this really flourished. So this is what we still practice today. When you see these Lam Rim texts and Lam Rim books, it's all the same way of approaching the spiritual path and the inner development.
So Lama Atisha, what he did was, he presented all of the essential points of Buddha's teachings in this experiential way. And he presented them essentially in three stages. The first, second, and third scopes, they're called. Scope has a very specific meaning. It relates to the capacity of the practitioner, the scope, or the capability, as Lama Zopa says. So the first and second scopes of the practice, of the teachings, they represent all the teachings, all the essential points in Buddha's teachings that we know as the Hinayana part of the path, Hinayana path. Then the third scope is the Mahayana part of the path. The three scopes altogether is all the practices that a person who's on the Mahayana path would practice, because you need to do the first two scopes in order to accomplish the third. Because if you're a Mahayana practitioner, you don't just do the third scope, which is all the compassion. The wisdom wing is the first two scopes, the Hinayana part of the path, and the compassion wing is the Mahayana path. Altogether, a Mahayana practitioner would practice all of these, because you need the first two, the wisdom wing, in order to accomplish the compassion wing. You need both wings. A bird needs two wings. So it's the way to working on the wisdom wing is where you really work on yourself. You turn yourself into this amazing being, then qualified to actually do the job, of benefiting others. What we really are is a potential Buddha. If it is true that this is our true nature, this is who we really are, then we indeed need someone to show us how to do it. So we look to the need for a teacher. And then there are various ways that are explained in the texts of how to devote oneself appropriately, the very heart of which is the idea of training our minds to see the Lama, the teacher, the spiritual guide, as the Buddha. That the most benefit comes to oneself from this practice. And then our teacher gets, that point of guru devotion is put there by the 14th century Lama of this tradition called Tsongkhapa. And the third point on the preciousness of this life that we have right now, not just to take it for granted. And this gives us enormous energy to want to not waste it. Then the first point we discussed in the first scope was the need to think about impermanence, but specifically the impermanence of this very person, which energizes us to even more want to not waste this life. That death is definite, its time is uncertain, and that the only thing that can benefit us at the time of death is the virtuous imprints in our mind, nothing else. Then this leads us on to the next contemplation, the first scope, as we discussed, which is looking at the logical likelihood of suffering lives in the future, given that we have a continuity of consciousness that is literally beginningless, given that we've been within samsara, having ignorance and therefore delusions, and therefore being reborn again and again and again, and therefore creating negative karmas endlessly, as well as positive ones. So it's logical, it's just logical, that there are there's a possibility of many suffering rebirths that our mind could take when it leaves this body at the time of death. So our teacher gets us to contemplate the suffering of the lower realms in order to energize us to have a healthy revulsion of being born in this way. This then leads us naturally to the next point, to turn for refuge to Buddha, who's the person who existed 2,500 years ago, who gave us the path, which is the actual refuge, the Dharma itself, the methods, the medicine to cure our minds, the methods to help ourselves transform ourselves, to avoid suffering in the future. And this leads us then to the culmination of the first scope, which is the essence of the practice, which is abiding by the laws of karma. Learning to know what to do and learning to know what to avoid doing, simply to avoid suffering and to get what we do want, which is happiness. It's a very practical solution, because one of the things that we're seeing clearly from understanding karma is that we are responsible for our own suffering and we're responsible for our own happiness, literally. In the second scope, we look more deeply, we look more in a more sophisticated way into our minds and start to see how even this life is in the nature of suffering. But it's much more subtle awareness we need to develop. Really is where we learn to be our own therapists. Understand very deeply in the context, for example, one way of looking at this whole scope is in the context that we discussed last week of the Four Noble Truths. That the essential point of that is the third one, which is Buddha's assertion that we can be free of suffering. This then really prepares us now to practice the second wing, the third scope, which is the work we do in relation to others. The heart of which is the development of compassion, specifically the development of the very focused, highly developed level of great compassion called bodhicitta. There's love and compassion, for example, these two essential characteristics. Love is the wish that others be happy. Compassion is the wish they don't suffer. It takes two different aspects of a person's life. So, if you love a person, you would see the person and you would be delighting in their good qualities. If you have compassion for a person, you look at the person and you have sorrow at their suffering. You wish they didn't suffer. You have empathy with them, their suffering. Right now, we have the wrong way of cherishing others. We do it because they're our friends and we want them to love us because we can keep being happy. It's completely got strings attached right now, the way we cherish others. And this is why, too, when we have our compassion now, we do have compassion now. We have compassion that's based on attachment. And so it always drags us down. That's why even if we're in the helping professions, we're being very compassionate. We get exhausted and drained, it drags us down. If we have to help people, mentally or physically, we get dragged down by it because we still have attachment to our own needs. So we're talking here of being way beyond attachment, really extraordinary, to go to extraordinary degrees of genuinely cherishing others with no strings, which is almost inconceivable in our culture. Because in our culture, ego is the reference point. It's the realization of the wisdom of emptiness that uproots finally the instincts of ego, which completes the wisdom wing. And then the work of benefiting others is what culminates, completes the active, proactive work of benefiting others, compassion. So it's then that person who finally becomes a Buddha, they've perfected the two wings, completed the two wings, completed the wisdom, completed the compassion.
But presenting the path, the Lam Rim, and the way that Lama Atisha and Lama Tsongkhapa put it together, it's like the blueprint. It's sort of taking all the Buddha's words and putting it into the order that we need to actually apply it in our lives. And so if I'm feeling like I'm a little bit lost, I don't really know where I need to put my energy and my attention and my practice, it's really easy. The teachings say, and I think this is really true, you can't develop the more advanced realizations if you don't have the very basic ones. I mean, if you haven't coped with our own impermanence and death and suffering, it's impossible to really have a true motivation to get out or even to help others, because we haven't really allowed ourselves to get in touch with how bad it really is, to give us the energy to develop the qualities to make it as good as it's possible to be. I think the first 12 or 13 years of my practice, I didn't do it that way. I kind of was a lot more hit and miss and really into, trying these more advanced practices and thought they were really cool. But I don't think I fundamentally was becoming a better human being. And it's not until I really went back and thought, I'm not getting anywhere as fast as I wanted to go. So maybe I should do it the way they explain it, that you're really supposed to do it, and spend a year on precious human rebirth and spend a year on death and impermanence until something really moves in my mind. So that's been my experiment the last 3 to 5 years. And at least from my personal experience, my internal experience, I think I'm finally feeling some shifts take place. And the thing that I find really interesting is that as I focus really on the beginning steps, even though I'm focusing most of my attention on the beginning, the other areas actually come more into focus. It's almost like dominoes, a domino effect. Yeah, then it's just a question of not being lazy and stop wasting time and just do the steps. And then maybe become a Buddha, help some people or something. It'd be great. I'd like to do that.
Mark, would you mind getting the light?
So let's do the prayers, Linda, and then we can read the 8 verses.
So if you're in the Kadampa, it's page 34.
Well, since this is a new module, a new round of Lam Rim, I'll spend a couple of seconds saying a little bit about refuge, particularly since we have new people here. So this is one of the steps in the Lam Rim, taking refuge, and I think a simple way to think about it is I like the one definition. Alex Berzin calls it putting a safe and positive direction in your life. But in a way, another example that comes to mind is one where You know, I've heard people talk about, like if you're in a hailstorm, I mean, and there's a shelter in the middle of the field, you're going to go to the shelter, right? You're going to go seek protection from the storm. So in that way, we go to refuge to the Buddhas, and we go into refuge to three things. We call it three jewels. The Buddhas, enlightened beings, but also, importantly, we're going refuge to our own Buddha potential. So it's not all external stuff. We all have that potential within us. We're going to refuge to the Dharma, but not just the books, not just the text, the words that we hear and read and such, but the realizations of those teachings. That's the true refuge, the Dharma refuge. And then the Sangha is like the helpers, the spiritual community where we support one another. And you know, that's why Kadampa Center is important, because, you know, there are people that can make, they're actually called solitary realizers, but there are not many of them. Most people who practice this path and have made any, you know, really deep inroads into it have the support of a spiritual community. So that's important. And then the ultimate Dharma is like, is basically those, or the true Sangha, the ultimate Sangha are those people that have realized emptiness in their mental continuum. So, but it's also our potential to realize, to become Sangha, to actually realize the true nature of reality or emptiness. So again, we're taking refuge in, we think of it as something external, like Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Those are things outside of us, but also our own potential to be Buddha, to realize the meanings of the teachings, and to be a helper, a true helper of others along the path. So that's kind of who we're taking refuge in. So it's not, you know, we don't bow down to, what is it, graven statues or whatever does it say in the Bible? What does it say don't do? Idols, yeah. Well, we're not doing that. These icons, all the pictures and everything are very powerful representations of what we can actually transform our mind into. That's one way to look at it. So I look around the Kadampa Center, and I know what this, when I was first introduced to Buddhism, if I walked in here, I'd be freaking out. I'd be, what is all of this? You know, what does it mean? But now that I've been around for a while, I see every bit of it is helpful to my mind. It's all meant to help us transform our mind. And there's three attitudes that we take, before we take refuge, three things that we need to at least reflect on. And one of them is this one's hard, but I'll say it because, you know, Robina talked about it very briefly, but the first is the suffering of the lower realms. And those are the hell realms, the sort of, they call it the Narak realms, or the hell realms, the hungry ghost realm, and the animal realm. We can see, the only one we can see is the animal realm. The other two realms are beyond our ability to see. But the causes to go to these what they call joyless states of rebirth is like really heavy negative karma, particularly like killing, or really heavy negative karma would get us reborn in a hellish existence. And they said the karmic cause of greed, I mean of the hungry ghost realm, is like miserliness, and the cause to be reborn as an animal is just stupidity, closed-minded stupidity. So, but you know, so since I can't see the realms, but I know that my mind cycles in these three realms all day long. You know, greed, hatred, ignorance, all day long. So, and I know that that's going to lead to suffering. So again, what we need to have some dread of having a mind that's really out of control. We don't have much control over our mind, do we? We think we do, but we don't. You know, we cannot control the next thought that comes up. We don't have that kind of control. So our mind, we're caught in this cycle of recurring kind of craziness. So we have to develop a dread. In the text it says of the three lower realms, but from a practical standpoint, it's realizing that we have those negative mind states that can project us into really difficult situations in the future. That's the dread we need to come to grips with. And that has a lot to do with the first noble truth. The second thing is confidence or faith. Okay, we can talk about faith all day long, but it's difficult. That's like a lot of us think, oh, faith, that's not Buddhism, that's Christianity, or, that's not part of what we do, but it's a big part of what we do. And without faith, we don't make any, without confidence and faith, we won't make any progress along the path. Now, where does that come from? Well, I mean, I don't expect people who are brand new to Tibetan Buddhism to have any faith yet. Maybe you've met a holy being in your life. Maybe you've met somebody that's really spiritually realized, and that's a great thing. That is the ultimate. I feel very fortunate to have met Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa. That was my introduction to Tibetan Buddhism, and I was very skeptical. I was asking questions. No, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. What do you mean by that? And then I went and met Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa individually, and that gave me a lot of confidence that this was a valid path, because I met people who were exemplars of the most amazing people I've ever met. Lama Zopa, back in those days, he never slept, and not like ordinary people do. He never laid down. He sat up 24/7. He constantly was, at the service of others. And his teacher, Lama Yeshe, had a different style, but he was also completely dedicated to the lives of other beings. So, again, I think faith or confidence in Buddhism comes from meeting these holy beings who are great examples of it, but ultimately it comes from us having tasted. We practice it. We've been able to use the practices to solve our problems. That gives us confidence. It's like we have this, most of us now, I was talking to one of my daughters the other day. I said, we have a medicine cabinet. When we get sick, we don't want to reach into the medicine cabinet and see a bunch of prescriptions that we never took to the pharmacy, right? We never got the medicine. But right now, all we have is a prescription. So, but if we have practiced the Dharma and have some experience of it, when we get angry or we get upset or we get fearful or whatever, negative mind state is basically taken over our consciousness, we can reach into the Dharma medicine cabinet and pull out the remedy for that particular situation. For example, compassion might be a remedy for our anger and our resentment, developing patience and so forth. And there are many, many techniques within Buddha Dharma to remedy all the different 84,000 delusions that we talk about. So I think those are so the first one is dread or fear of, they say, the lower realms, but we want to think about that in terms that are meaningful to you. The second point is confidence in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, that they can actually deliver on what they claim. And the third is compassion for yourself and compassion for other beings. Those are the three attitudes that we need to reflect on before we take refuge in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So those are just a snapshot of how we'll do that. So page 34, yeah. So we'll do the refuge in bodhicitta, since we're using our time up pretty well. I'll tell you what, we'll do all of them, and then we'll read through which pages are the 8 verses on in 161. Okay, good. So when we're done with this, we'll flip to 161 and read through the 8 verses. All right. So also, when you see people doing refuge, doing prayers and stuff, some people don't. Some people don't put their hands at their heart. Other people, I know Lama Zopa always does. Basically, you put your hands at your heart, and you think of, like, often Tibetans in particular, the Tibetan style is to put the fingers inside, and it's like you're holding this wish-fulfilling gem, which is symbolic of all sentient beings. So, oh yeah, like that. Anyway, so, and the left hand sometimes refers to the female energy, which is synonymous with wisdom, and the right hand is symbolic of the male energy, or is compassion. So this is the union of wisdom and compassion, and we're holding all sentient beings at our heart, and so you'll see people this is a form of prostration. And so we're paying homage to these teachings too, as we say these prayers together. All right, so we'll go, and you can read along with me. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Hang on a minute. The first two lines distinguish people who are between Buddhist and non-Buddhist, okay? So I'm going to refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, Supreme Assembly. That's a Buddhist, okay? So that describes, the second two lines distinguish somebody who's practicing the Hinayana versus the Mahayana. So we practice the Mahayana. So by my practice of giving and other perfections, those are the 6 bodhisattva perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So that's the Mahayana motive. So we distinguish ourselves as a Buddhist who's practicing the Mahayana by doing this. And we'll say it one more time. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened, to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Reverently, I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time, and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. And then it's kind of traditional to do a mandala offering at the beginning of a teaching. And so if you have a mala, sometimes you'll see people, this is a mala or a rosary, and so oftentimes people will, because they don't want to offer nothing. If you have a mala, it's good to have one. But we do this little mudra. It's kind of weird looking, but it symbolizes the universe. In Buddhist cosmology, they talk about at the center of the universe is Mount Meru, M-E-R-U, which are these fingers, and then there are 4 continents. So you hold this at the heart. So you're to receive the teachings, you're willing to offer everything in the universe that's good and wonderful, just because you're so you really want to get these teachings and to have a chance to practice it and solve our problems. So that's the attitude about the mandala offering. It's offering. We're creating a lot of merit when we offer it, and we're kind of opening our hearts at the same time. Yeah. So this ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun, the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha filling offer it. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niyata Yami, which I think translates, I'd offer this mandala to the gurus. And then we're going over to the 8 verses. So this practice, I want to say this right, I think it's Geshe Langri Dampa, right? Yeah. I don't see his name in here yet, but anyway, these verses are, wonderful teachings, very, very cryptic, but they touch on all of the Dharma. All of Buddha Dharma is subsumed in these verses if we understand the meaning of them. So tonight we'll probably touch on the first 2 anyway. Determined to attain the greatest possible benefit from all sentient beings who are more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel, I shall hold them most dear at all times. When in the company of others, I shall always consider myself the lowest of all, and from the depths of my heart, hold others dear and supreme. By the way, you might notice, every one of these verses makes your ego sort of flinch a little bit, because it's like, what? It really is so antithetical to our egocentric mindset. Vigilant, the moment a delusion appears in my mind, endangering myself and others, I shall confront and avert it without delay. Whenever I see beings who are wicked in nature and overwhelmed by violent negative actions and suffering, I shall hold such rare ones dear, as if I had found a precious treasure. When out of envy, others mistreat me with abuse, insults, or the like, I shall accept defeat and offer the victory to others. When someone whom I've benefited and whom I have great hope gives me terrible harm, I shall regard that person as my holy guru. In short, both directly and indirectly do I offer every happiness and benefit to all my mothers. I shall secretly take upon myself all their harmful actions and suffering. Undefiled by the stains of the superstitions of the 8 worldly concerns, may I, by perceiving all phenomena as illusory, be released from the bondage of attachment. So, that's a good start. So let's, any questions so far about any of this? Anything you've heard, anything you want to say?
If anyone has a question online, just unmute. Or you could also put it in the chat.
Oh, well. All right. So let's go through the first couple of verses. Determined to obtain the greatest possible benefit from all sentient beings who are more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel, I shall hold them most dear at all times. So who wants to answer that one? Who wants to explain that verse? John, you're just about to jump out of your seat, I can tell. You want to take a crack at it?
I think that this is about recognizing other beings as at least as important as yourself, in terms of them not liking suffering and wanting happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the precious as a wish-fulfilling jewel refers to how sentient beings help us develop our own compassion. And that's the classic way I think that we rely on them.
Yeah, so it's in relationship or in dependence upon other beings that we can develop ourselves along the path. You know, we need to have other beings, to help us. For example, we don't develop patience without what? Difficult people. We got to have somebody that annoy us before we, and we see that we have a problem, like our anger, our impatience needs some work. And so it's in dependence upon the so-called enemy or the person that we feel aversion toward that we have the opportunity to develop inner strength or patience. So that's a big part of the practice. So all the qualities that we want to develop depend upon all sentient beings. And so, this wish-fulfilling jewel, that we were talking about, is actually all sentient beings. That's what the wish-fulfilling jewel is. Yeah.
So if our enlightenment is dependent, just from what we're saying right here with this verse, with this first one, if our enlightenment is dependent upon all other sentient beings, and they are the wish-fulfilling jewel, would we say that enlightenment is not possible without others?
I think that's fair. Yeah. We need, you can develop, we need others to achieve enlightenment. I think it's a fair statement.
It's almost like
I never heard that question before, but it makes perfect sense.
right? It just seems like then in that case, these relationships and these interactions that we have with other people, which usually cause us the most suffering, are actually our doorway if we stick to the practice and commit to the practice of transmuting through everything we're learning.
Right.
It's a clear practice.
Well, if you just look at developing bodhicitta, for example, when we meditate on bodhicitta, we start out by, again, we're meditating on the first step in generating bodhicitta is meditating on equanimity. So we envision, universal living beings who are nameless. That makes the majority of them, the so-called strangers. And we have the people that we feel attachment to and the people that we feel aversion to. So that these three sort of general categories of beings. And we start out by trying to develop an equanimous attitude toward these kinds of beings, because we need equanimity, before we can develop compassion. Otherwise, our compassion is really biased. So we're trying to develop universal compassion. So we can't, even though in our real life we do have people that we're closer to, this is an attitude that we're aspiring to develop, one of equanimity. Doesn't mean we can't have special family and so forth. Yeah.
So then that would be the wing of compassion, right? Having to do with others. And then maybe, and this is me just trying to put it together best I can, the wing of emptiness would be on one's own as one goes through sickness, aging, and death, which is completely within their own minds of the suffering that goes along with one's own internal experience of suffering, sickness and aging and death, which has nothing to do with anybody else, but all of the pain and the suffering has to do with how we experience it, because we experience it as permanent experiences. Then the wing of emptiness, the wing of emptiness helps us to see experiences as they really are, and outside of interactions and human relation. I don't know, I'm just kind of trying to pull it together.
Yeah. Well, I think, when we talk about how all of our realizations in some way depend on others, I mean, the first noble truth, the Four Noble Truths, I think we can touch on that really quickly here, is that, and we don't just see it in ourselves, we see it in other people too all the time. The Four Noble Truths, try to get my kids to remember this. It's the only way they can. The first of it is all worldlings are deranged. The Buddha talked about this. He used the word dukkha, which is very difficult. There's not one word that you can translate it. Some people, it's unsatisfactoriness, whatever, but it's something, it's suffering, it's everything that is stuff that we don't want. So that's the first noble truth was that all worldlings we're sick, okay? Now, there's a cause for the sickness, which is karma and delusion. And then in Buddhism, we say that this illness, this sickness that we have can be cured, That's called nirvana, freedom from suffering. And then the fourth noble truth is the truth of the path. So this is important. We're all sick, okay? And there's a cause for the sickness, and it can be cured, and there's a cure. And the cure is the Lam Rim, is working the steps of the Lam Rim. And so it's really understanding dukkha, the first noble truth, that is independent upon that understanding that we can develop compassion. Not only, importantly for ourselves, but also for universal living beings, right? And as a Buddhist, we're not getting enlightened for us. It's like, as a Mahayana practitioner, it's like I must help. This is the attitude that a tantric practitioner would have, and a true Mahayanist who practices wholeheartedly. It's like, I must help others. I must help others eliminate their suffering and help them find supreme happiness and joy and freedom, and even become a Buddha. I must do that. Well, how do I do that? I've got to get my act together. I have to do it for myself first. So our aim is supreme enlightenment for the benefit of others, and the method is our own enlightenment. So it's sort of like the goal is to help others, and as the byproduct of doing that is our own joy and happiness and freedom come along with it. But so that's the purpose for becoming a Buddha, is to benefit others. No, it's not to achieve happiness for ourselves alone. And so in that way, it involves all living beings. Any other questions about that verse? So let's do the other one, because we're running out of time here. But in the company of others, I shall also always consider myself the lowest of all, and from the depths of my heart hold others dear and supreme. Well, that's a tricky one. Anybody want to take that one? Well, I guess it's on me now. But it's, some people have a lot of problem with this verse. I'm the lowest of all. I mean, I've already got an inferiority complex, and I don't even like myself most of the time. And now this is like a put down. When I'm in the company of others, I should always consider myself the lowest of all, and from the depths of my heart hold others dear and supreme. So I actually heard these teachings from the Dalai Lama. I'm trying to remember what he said, but I've heard these teachings on multiple occasions, and I think it's the takeaway for me is that generally we are pretty. I say we don't like ourselves, but generally we have a pretty high opinion of ourselves. We don't see our faults like other people do, that's for sure. And so this is like, in a way, an antidote to arrogance. So when we're in the company of others, to consider ourselves the lowest of all, and from the depths of our heart hold others dear and supreme. So it's, again, it's our instinct to cherish ourselves is most important. I mean, we call it self-cherishing, don't we? Self-cherishing selfishness is the biggest obstacle to our happiness. In the meditations in developing bodhicitta, when we get down to, we do the equality of self and others, and then you go the faults of self-cherishing selfishness. Well, that's the problem. That's our biggest problem. All the suffering in samsara, from the beginning of beginningless time until now, is the fault of this attitude called self-cherishing selfishness. So here we're talking in this verse, we're really talking about confronting that. So in the company of others, I shall always consider myself the lowest of all, which is not my instinct, and from the depths of my heart hold others dear and supreme. Again, seeing the great value in others. It's independence upon others that we can develop universal compassion. It's dependent on others that we actually have a body. This life, this body depends on others. This Kadampa center depends on others. The food we eat, everything we have depends on others. So, we are, we're beholding to universal living beings, and so to cherish them, from the depths of our heart, hold others dear and supreme.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Could it also be a verse that we can aspire to? So although we might not be there yet, to be able to, consider ourselves the lowest of all, we can aspire to eventually be that.
I mean, I think that absolutely every one of these verses are things that we can aspire to. And I shall always consider myself the lowest of all. So I think if you around somebody like Lama Zopa Rinpoche or His Holiness, I mean, very humble, right? But also totally self-confident. I mean, there's not any weakness there. But they don't come off as being, somebody special. His Holiness says, I'm just a simple Buddhist monk. So they don't, but clearly he is special, but that's not the way he presents himself to the world. So I shall always consider myself the lowest of all, and from the depths of my heart hold others dear and supreme. I think that we can think about that in the next week. So let's go ahead and do just a couple of minutes of contemplation before we wrap it up. We have about 6 minutes, so we'll take about 3 minutes just to sit with these verses, see if anything comes up for you. You can, there's a type of meditation that was, I think it's really emphasized in this tradition. It's analytical meditation. But usually it's combined with concentration. So usually what you'll do is an analytical meditation. For example, you would read the verse, determined to obtain the greatest possible benefit from all sentient beings who are more precious than a wish-fulfilling jewel. I shall hold them most dear at all times. So you'd sit and think about, what does that mean to me? What do those words mean? How does that affect me? What does it mean for me? How can it benefit me in some way? To think that way. And we do sort of this internal debate sometimes. Sometimes it's a debate. Sometimes it's just, affirming the meaning of the words. And then at some point we stop this sort of discursive part of it, and our mind we set our mind single-pointedly on the conclusion of that particular verse. So we combine a sort of analytical meditation with single-pointed concentration practice. And we go back and forth. When our concentration weakens, we go back and analyze the meaning of the words. And then once we come to a conclusion, we hold our mind still on that conclusion, sort of hold it in our heart for as long as we can. And we go back and forth like that. And that's how we gain a deeper realization of these words rather than have them just be empty words that wash over us. So we'll spend a couple of minutes thinking about these two verses. Okay, so I think we can do our dedication verses now. Just a little sidebar to these two. Lama Yeshe, who is Lama Zopa's guru and my refuge Lama, and also my guru, one of his sort of habits was to call everybody dear. And it was people he didn't even know. He'd be walking, everybody was dear. And I think this is, just his way of trying to see he would even say dear. He'd say dear. Come over here, dear. Can I help you, dear? And it was his way of labeling everybody as precious and dear and worthy of respect. That's how I used to take it. It's an interesting way to walk down the street and just practice tomorrow or this week, just labeling everybody as dear, as precious, as somebody worthy of kindness and respect. Yeah. Yeah. Or mother. Yeah. Yeah. So you find the label that works. So we'll do the dedication verses. We'll do the Shantideva's prayer.
It's page 32 in the prayer book or on the screen.
Actually, what page is it on again? The long one? Yeah, there it is. Okay. May all beings everywhere, plagued by the sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with the mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. Those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing and the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness, and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from the ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and may those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, till then to remain, to dispel the miseries of the world. Okay, thank you, and have a good week. We'll take two verses. It's kind of how Robbie did it last time around, but we'll take two verses each time. But we'll review all the 8 verses, but we'll focus on 2 verses. So the next 2 verses for the next class, and there are lots of resources out there on this particular text, or the 8 verses of mind training. So I don't have a specific book to recommend.
All right, thank you, everyone. The first of 4 classes is complete. We'll have class next Monday night, and then we'll skip a week, and then resume back on the April 14th, and then the last class will be on the 21st. So just put that on your calendars if you need to. Anything else, Linda?
Yeah, so if you want to come on Monday, April 7th, though, we will be doing Guru Puja with Sog, which is always a lot of fun. That one's only in person, so if you're local, join us for that on Monday, April 7th, which is my daughter's 20th birthday. Yeah, and don't forget, you can get the 8 verses and other resources that Don Brown shared on the website. So if you go to kadampa-center.org and then click on either the Discovering Buddhism banner picture or the calendar webpage for Discovering Buddhism, that those resources are there. There's a commentary also on the 8 verses of thought transformation. Yeah, it sounds like it's pouring here. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Bye, Rainey. See you Saturday.
Yeah.